and gentlemen, would you please rise and join me in welcoming the Wilmington Good Guy for the year 2000, Joan Searfoss. Congratulations, Joan. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming this evening. We'll be serving dinner in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my. My mother, how'd she get here?
Well, she was getting dressed.
Oh my God! She in it? Oh my God! My family!
Don't stop. Good job. How you doing? Didn't expect this, huh?
Lila! Oh my God!
Christopher.
Oh
Congratulations. How are you? Congratulations. So
Your husband is just laughing.
Oh my God!
Hi, Joe. How you feel? Good?
I'm so short.
congratulations, dear.
Oh my God.
Are you shocked or what?
Yes.
You had no idea?
You're all right,
Yes. No. I don't believe it. How did they get there?
Never been over that way. Congratulations,
How did she get here?
She drove.
How are you?
Now I know why she had the guest house out. She had a guest house anyway. What are you going to do? Hey, you little pathead. How did you get Oh, God.
I know. Oh, we had to work, honey. Honey's his loud.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I get your attention for just one moment, please? Before we have dinner and before we say grace, we have the pleasure this evening of having Congressman John Tierney in attendance, and unfortunately the congressman has to leave early and has asked if he could wish Joan well and congratulate her in her Good Guy Award, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you our Congressman John Tierney.
Thank you very much. Joan, I was just wondering if you, for the benefit of the people that couldn't see you when you came in the door, could you turn around once more and mouth those first two words you said when you came in the door?
I say that at work all the time.
Well, now I understand that this is going to be on over and over again all year, so we'll be able to catch it up with a good lip reader. We'll be able to do this from time to time. I'm very happy that Patrice and I were able to join you tonight. I regret that we have to leave and go to another part of the district, but I wanted to make sure that we came by because this is truly one of the nice, very nice awards that goes on throughout the district in the course of a year. Earlier tonight, I had occasion to be at a citizenship ceremony up in the northern end of the district. And it's quite an impressive event where people take all the courses they need to take and learn the language, learn the history of our country, and then have the ability to take a test to become citizens. And when asked to say a few words, I was explaining to them that that's very nice what they did. It was great, that everything they did so far in the citizenship game was great, but that citizenship in this country really was more than just taking an oath, was more than being born into this country, learning the language and learning a little history. And in trying to think about it, it made me recall the fact that Dick Gephardt, not too very long ago, taken a trip to Russia. And while he was there, and he recounted this to me afterwards, he was talking to several people from the Duma, several people that were notables in that society, and he asked one of them, he said, you know, how is it that Russia can be such a large country, so wealthy, such a great nation, and yet so many problems, so much trouble, so difficult getting itself really started up? And the fellow he was talking to thought for a long time and said, you know, Congressman, he said, in Russia we have a lot of very, very good chess players. So we have international champions. And in our country we have some of the best ballet dancers in the world. They go on national tours and show people how dancing can really be done. And we have some of the world's very, very best nuclear physicists. In fact, we created the bomb, and we have as many armaments as the United States, and we're as much of a threat. But the one thing that we don't have in Russia, he told Dick, is citizens. We really don't have people who understand what it means to be a citizen in a democracy. And I told the people earlier this evening that story and finished it by saying that later in the evening, I was going to Wilmington, going to an event about the Good Guy event, where people in the community get to honor somebody in their midst who really exemplifies what a citizen is, who does things for their community, as Joan does, coincidentally, on the 4th of July for 20 years, about our background, our heritage, and our society, but for the foundation, for so much that's important to her friends and relatives and neighbors, and that's what citizenship's about. It's not just being sworn in, it's not being born to this country, it's participating. It's getting involved day in and day out without any real expectation that you're going to get acknowledged. But it is so nice on those occasions when we do get a chance to acknowledge somebody who's done so much. And Joan, it's my privilege here tonight to give you this certificate of special congressional recognition presented to Joan Searfoss in recognition of outstanding and invaluable service to the community, and I congratulate you for all you've done. Thank you very much.
Just a real quick biography of Joan's life before we have the speakers come up. Just want to go over a couple of points. Joan was born in Presque Isle, Maine. I won't mention the year, but she is a maniac. She graduated from Presque Isle High School and got her degree from Bryant College. She married Dick Searfoss 27 years ago on July 24th, 1971.
29.
29. She makes a point of saying 29, not 27.
Pleasant years.
Pleasant years. She started her career at Ropes and Gray 33 years ago in 1966. And Steve Wilcox, her boss, she deserves a big raise. She moved to Wilmington in 1973, and since then has been a member of many, many groups in the town of Wilmington, which is obviously the reason that we're here tonight to honor her. Some of those groups were the Wilmington 250th Anniversary Committee, the American Legion Auxiliary, the VFW Auxiliary, the Wilmington Memorial Day Parade Committee, the Community Fund, the Wilmington 4th of July Committee, and the Friends of the Wilmington Library. There's many people from those groups tonight that are here to honor her and that will speak this evening. I want to remind those speakers that the flavor of the evening is to have fun. This is a roast of Joan Searfoss. As Dick said, it will probably be the only roast he gets unless he cooks it himself. My comments, ladies and gentlemen, are in jest. They're in fun, unless you're an elected official, and then I mean them. Speaking of elected officials, our first speaker this evening is Representative Jim Maselli. And I saw Jim the other day. I was driving by down in Tewksbury, by all the fields where the Tewksbury State Hospital is. And I saw Jim standing out there in the middle of the field. I drove by on Tuesday and Jim was there. Drove by on Wednesday, Jim's still out there in the field. Drove by on Thursday, pouring rain, Jim's out in the field. So I had to stop. I asked him, I said, Jim, what the heck are you doing? And he said, well, Jim, you know those Nobel Prizes? I read in the paper the other day that they give those to people that are outstanding in their field. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our representative from Wilmington and Tewksbury, Jim Maselli. That one's yours, right?
It's good material, yep, I think so. Oh, yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight to honor Joan Searfoss. And I think you heard Jimmy go through that list of accomplishments. And you know, Jim said the flavor is kind of a roast. I'm probably not going to get into it in that, or kick it off in that vein, because the individual that I know has worked very hard in the community, spent a lot of time with these organizations. And you know, we always see her around 4th of July during that whole week. I don't think she goes home at all. But what we have here tonight is a real sense of community. And everybody keeps waiting for a joke. I've got a couple, but I don't think this is an appropriate time. But I'll say this, that we have a real sense of community. You know, people really put their time into this town, as I look out here tonight, to really make it go. It's got the flavor of one of these old New England towns. I think, as someone said earlier, there aren't a lot of transients in this community. People come to this community and they stay here. And they stay here because of people like Joan, who devote their time, dedicate, and put in a lot of work, as I said, on things like the 4th of July week. So I'd like to read a citation, congratulate the committee on picking an outstanding recipient, someone who's done an awful lot for this community. But before I present the citation, I will tell you one story about Joan. You know, we can all learn from each other. And one night, and we were going to a wake, and Joan was a couple in front of me, and while we were walking in there, Joan looked over, and I saw her throw $200 into a coffin. And then I was following her, and I thought, well, that must be the tradition, and I added 100. And Jimmy Stewart was in back of me, and I saw Jimmy Stewart said, gee, I know that individual very well, and I think I'm going to follow the tradition that's been set forth before I got here. and he took out a checkbook, wrote a check for $600, threw it in, took Joan's $100 and my $200, and walked out. But seriously, I'd like to present a citation. It's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the House of Representatives. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Joan Searfoss in recognition of your dedication to the town of Wilmington. With your involvement in a multitude of activities, you have enhanced the lives of our community. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune, continued success in all endeavors, and it's signed the 12th day of May, 2000, Thomas Finneran, Speaker of the House, James Maselli, Chairman, and I always say it's nonpartisan, and I know you'll be happy. I have one from the other side of the aisle. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Arjo Paul Salucci, Governor, to Joan Searfoss, in honor of your receiving the Wilmington Good Guy Award, which is deserving of recognition by all the citizens of Massachusetts, and it's signed the 12th day of May, 2000. Joan, congratulations. On behalf of the community, let me thank you for all that you've done.
Rule number 1, never make fun of the MC. Jim got a call from a constituent the other day. Said that the guy had been married to his wife for about 15 years, and they had a number of children. And they hadn't been out on a date for 11 years. It's their 15th wedding anniversary. He called Jim and he said, Jim, I need some advice. I want to have a very romantic dinner with my wife, and I want to have a very passionate evening in some historic building in Boston. And Jim said, well, why don't you come up to State House? Everybody gets screwed up here. Not a chance. Our next speaker is from the Wilmington 4th of July Committee, and he is the newest member of the 4th of July Committee, so he gets the honor of having to speak in front of this crowd, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Scott Garant.
Thank you, Jim. And just to show my appreciation for asking me to speak, I will break rule number 1. Before we begin, if there's no objection, I'd like to take a couple of moments and offer the quorum of selectmen that we have here the opportunity to take a few minutes to try and select a chairperson. But on behalf of the 4th of July Committee, I'd like to show our appreciation to Joan, who was a founding member of the committee, and thank her for 75 years of service to the committee. For those of you familiar with how we do business during the week of the 4th of July, it's easy to see that Joan is the most trusted person on our committee. Each year she is charged with going down to the carnival operators, counting the tickets, and making sure that the committee gets every penny that we deserve. We never question whether a penny's missing. Dick, how's that new Lincoln treating you? One of the benefits that the committee bestows each year on the person chosen as the good guy is a parking sticker for the entire week right next to the 4th of July building. Unfortunately, this year the recipient lives a mere 100 yards from the building. So Joan, I've taken the opportunity to negotiate a deal for you, and I've had the sticker printed up. I hope everyone can see it. It says, reserved for, right there it says Joan Searfoss, 2000, Wilmington Good Guy, and right there it says, who is allowing James Stewart to use her space?
Thank you.
As Jim mentioned, I'm a relative newcomer on the committee. I am the newest member of the executive board. Joan has been invaluable to me in the 3 years that I've been on the committee, telling me over the walkie-talkie, Scott, get down to the carnival. Scott, get over to the bandstand. Scott, put this here. Scott, put that there. So I learned early on that she's put to well use her years as a legal secretary by telling us attorneys where to go and where to stick things. But with all sincerity, in many ways, Joan is the glue that holds our committee together. It's her dedication, her hard work, and her perseverance throughout the year that allows us to present what I believe is the best 4th of July festivities in the area. Thank you, Joan.
Scott looks good. The other day, actually, he was at the emergency room with a couple of other guys, and the doctor came in, put the 3 of them in their individual rooms. He walks into the first guy, says, "What happened to you?" He says, "Well, I came home from work early today, went up the stairs to my 2nd-story apartment, walk in, and there's a cigar burning in the ashtray. And obviously my wife doesn't smoke cigars. And all of a sudden I see her run across the room, and she's scantily clad. And I figure that there must be someone here with my wife. So I get pretty upset. And I run out to the sliding doors, and I see this guy running by my house with no shirt on, just shorts and running shoes. So I figure that's the guy that must have been with my wife. So I pick up the refrigerator. He's a big guy. Pick up the refrigerator, and I throw it off the balcony, and I catch my belt loop on the refrigerator handle, and I go over the balcony, and I get hurt coming down. The doctor says, "Okay, fine, I'll send you to X-ray." Goes into the second guy, says, "What happened to you?" He says, "Well, you're not going to believe this, Doc. I'm just running by this 2-story house on my daily 5-mile run, took my shirt off because it's real hot, and I look up and this madman's coming at me with this refrigerator. Luckily I get out of the way and it lands on my foot. I think I broke my foot." He says, "Well, you go into X-ray number 2. Goes in to see Scott, and he says, "So, Mr. Grant, what's your problem?" He says, "Doc, you're not going to believe this. There I am, sitting in this refrigerator, minding my own business." I promised Scott, he mentioned that he was an attorney, and I promised him no attorney jokes while he was up here. Our next speaker is Steve Wilcox from Ropes and Gray, and he's an attorney, and I promised him nothing. So sit down, Steve. We'll be with you in 1 second. Now about Joan's raise. There's 4 people sitting in a room, $500 in the middle of the room. There's an honest attorney, Santa Claus, a dishonest attorney, and the Easter Bunny. Who leaves the room with the $500? The dishonest attorney, because the other 3 don't exist. Oh, oops, sorry. Could someone watch the door with all the attorneys in here? I think I heard an ambulance, and we'll lose half the crowd if they start chasing it. There's a lot of attorneys. Wow. Actually, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Steve. I've heard great things from both Joan and Dick about Steve, who is Joan's boss, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you from the law firm of Ropes and Gray, Steve Wilcox.
Well, my name is Steve Wilcox. I'm a partner in the Boston law firm of Ropes and Gray, where Joan has worked for at least several decades. She's been my secretary for the better part of 1 decade. She understands mergers, acquisitions, public offerings, venture capital financings, and other corporate finance transactions, as well as many of our lawyers. She corrects my legal opinions, questions ambiguously drafted contractual provisions, handles difficult ornery clients with great skill. Anyone that knows Joan Searfoss knows that she is truly a remarkable person. If Ropes and Gray had a Good Guy Award, they would, after changing the name to Good Person Award, or something more politically correct, would certainly elect Joan as an award recipient. To say that she is involved, engaged, responsible, caring, organized, is a great understatement. She gives 110% to everything she does and always finishes every job she starts. Joan, you're the greatest.
He said nothing about your raise. Okay, we'll have to get back at him later. I'd like to, at this time, recognize a few of the dignitaries, elected officials that are in the room. First, representing the town hall, in the corner, the assistant town manager, Mr. Jeff Hull. From the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, Mr. Jim Rooney. Also from the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, Mr. Mike Newhouse. And Joan, the town manager, sends his regrets, not that he couldn't be here, but that he has to work with those two guys. And to present the annual bowl from the Wilmington Board of Selectmen is the chairman of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, Bob Kane. And I have a real quick story. Bob, the president was in town a couple of weeks ago. You know how he comes off Air Force One, walks down the steps? Well, he's walking down the steps with these two pigs under his arms. He walks down, and you know the Marine that stands down the bottom, salutes him when he gets off. He says, "Nice pigs, Mr. President." The president says, "These aren't pigs, son. These are original, authentic Arkansas Razorbacks." He says, "Sorry, sir, nice Razorbacks." He says, "Well, Mr. President, what are you doing with two Razorbacks coming off of Air Force One?" And he says, "Well, I got to tell you, son, I got one of these for the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, and I got one of these for the Wilmington Legislative Delegation." The Marine thinks for me, he says, "Nice trade, sir." Having fun yet? Jim's just smiling at me. Our next speaker is the current chairman, soon to be chairman, always will be chairman the way things are going, Mr. Bob Kane.
Well, it's usually appropriate to say thank you when somebody invites you to come to the podium and speak to the crowd. But that gets kind of scary. If a guy can say those things about a guy that has a gun permit and is pretty good with it, you know, that's scary. And by the way, we did take a vote at my table to see who was going to be the next chairman, and I was elected unanimously. So let's not think that we don't have a chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Joan, some time ago, we did serve on the same committee, the 250th Anniversary Committee. And when we start coming out tonight to this banquet, the first thing Harriet asked was, "Are they going to serve any food tonight?" So I did notice that the food was brought out first, so that was very good. So Harriet and Joanne and all of us, the town of Wilmington, appreciate all the effort that you do, not only back in the days of the 250th Anniversary Committee, but in the 4th of July Committee, and all the efforts you give to the town of Wilmington. And we hope that you're not going to stop now just because you're doing so well. I had a big speech here, and Mr. Kyra wrote out this big, nice message for you in this bowl, and I would like to present it to you, and it says, "The Board of Selectmen, May 12, 2000, a real good guy, Joan D. Searfoss."
I'm not sure who he meant had a gun permit, but it's not me. Okay, just to set the record straight. Three guys. They go to the pearly gates. First guy in St. Peter says to him, "We've changed the rules of how you get into heaven. We now segregate heaven by your IQ." Says the first guy, "What's your IQ?" Says, "It's 170. Says, "Wow, that's pretty high. You go in with the Einsteins of the world and everybody else, all the brilliant scientists." Says the second guy, "What's your IQ?" He says, 130. He says, "Wow, you're in with like the John Kennedys and the great world leaders." Says the third guy, "What's your IQ?" He says, "Well, it's 65. He says, "Well, how were things on the Board of Selectmen?" it's nice to be on this side of the microphone, I'll tell you. Our next speaker, Joan has been taking public transportation for many years into the city, and she rides the train with a number of people from the town of Wilmington and from surrounding towns, and one of those people would like to say a few words and tell you a little bit about Joan, and that individual is Rondi Holland. Rondi?
Well, first of all, I have to say, I don't think that I volunteered for this. Dick kind of put me up to it. It's because everybody else in our group doesn't like to speak very much, except on the train. Little did anyone know that 27 years ago when Joan started riding the train from Wilmington that she would be the president and official founding member of the Wilmington Train Gang. We're a little known social organization, but we have a great time. She keeps us informed almost weekly of the activities of the 4th of July Committee, the Friends of the Library, the sales, the upcoming elections. So we're pretty well get around. And on behalf, Joan, of all your friends on the train, we'd like to give you this little token of our appreciation and hope you use it well.
Thank you, Rondi. Nice job. I thought it would be appropriate to give you a little history for those of you that aren't familiar with the Wilmington Good Guy Award. The Wilmington Good Guy Award started many, many years ago at Rocco's Restaurant, where a number of Rocco's friends got together and awarded him with the first annual Wilmington Good Guy Award at Rocco's Restaurant. And the event has grown each year, and there's a number of Wilmington Good Guys that have been, or good people, sorry Steve, good persons, I guess would be the appropriate legal term now. And I wanted to recognize some of them that are here this evening. Former good guys, and if I could, if they could stand, and when I recognize them, Mr. Frank Sarraza. Mr. Jack Cushing. Mr. Frank Kelly. Ms. Judy De Palma. Mr. Paul Bova. Mr. Ivan Palmer. Ms. Irene Brennan. Mr. Bob De Palmer. Mr. Tom Pizarro. Mr. Ed Whitney. Mr. Jim Buckley. Ms. Phyllis Vieira. Mr. Bill Ross. And Mr. Chip Bruce. And one of our former good guys could not be here this evening, Harry Cunningham, who actually is the annual Master of Ceremonies for this event. And Harry, I cannot possibly fill your shoes, and we wish you were here. Unfortunately, Harry's wife, Jo, passed away this week. And I have a special award here for Harry from the Wilmington Good Guy Committee in recognition of the continuing outstanding contributions to this organization that Harry has made. And I'd like to just present this to him when I see him next time, but I want you all to be aware that the committee is making this award to Harry Cunningham. And I'd like to take a moment, and I know it's not customary in the middle of the ceremony, to ask you all to take a moment of silence, if you would, for Harry's wife, Jo, and for 3 former good guys who have passed away in the past year, in recent past, Rocco DiPasquale, Dick Duggan, and Rico Catalano, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Our next speaker is Joan and Dick's niece, Chris Corbett. And Chris is a pet lover. She has a cat, and the cat wasn't feeling well the other day, and she took the cat to the vet. She brought the cat in, and it really wasn't doing well, and the vet told it, geez, sorry, Chris, I don't think the cat's going to make it. And Chris said, I'm sorry, doctor, I need a second opinion. So the doctor calls in his cat, Fluffy. Fluffy jumps up on the table and walks up one side and down the other of Chris's cat, up again, down again. She does this a few times, and the cat gets down off the table and shakes its head. The doctor says, sorry, Chris, it doesn't look good. So Chris goes outside to the receptionist, gets the bill. She looks at the bill, and it's $300. She says, what in the world could you have done for $300? Could you explain this? And the receptionist said, no problem. It's $50 for the office visit, $50 for the doctor's exam, and $200 for the CAT scan. That's not bad. That's really not bad. Our next speaker, as I mentioned, is Dick and Joan's niece, Chris Corbett.
Good evening. I would like to, first of all, thank the Wilmington Good Guy Award Committee for the opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of my family. I just feel it's a rare opportunity to be able to speak publicly about your feelings about a family member. I have to tell you that I deliberated about what I was going to say about my Aunt Joan. My first thought was to roast her, as everyone has taken the liberty to do so well. Really throw in a few good jokes and really poke some fun. However, my aunt doesn't make that easy. For those of you who know my uncle, now that would be a different story. But my aunt, on the other hand, makes it harder for me to do. My aunt is simply a sweetheart. She has a heart of gold. So instead, I decided to be honest, perhaps a little mushy, to express how I feel about her. There are endless examples of kindness and love she has shown me. I couldn't possibly share them all with you. My fondest memories are not only from childhood, but from the time that I was attending school nearby. Some of us know what it's like to be away from home. It's really hard, and my aunt has always been here for me. There were times when I was sick, when I had papers due, exams to take, piles and piles of laundry that would show up at her doorstep, and her home was always open to me. She also fed me a lot. I thank her for the 30-pound weight gain in my freshman year. And there were always leftovers to take home. These simple things were so meaningful to me, and they still are. But I'm not the only one she so willingly takes care of. There are other nieces and nephews, in-laws, and of course her mom and husband. She gives so freely to us all. She's the type of person who invests time and energy into her community, but also gives abundantly to her family. I'd like to thank her personally for that, as well on behalf of our whole family. It can't be said enough, Aunt Joan. You truly do have a heart of gold. I would like to take this time to present you with a token of appreciation from our family. It's a heart of gold pendant. It represents our love for you, as well as the wonderful things you've done for our family. I thank you, and I love you.
That was very nice, Chris. Nice job. Our next speaker is the president of the Wilmington Community Fund, Joe DeRosa. And Joe, I had this dream the other night, and I had a dream that I had passed away, and unfortunately I went the wrong way, which some of you are probably saying, big surprise, right? But I get down there, and Satan is taking me around, and I walk by this one door, and there's Joe DeRosa with Shania Twain in this room. If you know Shania Twain, you know what I'm talking about. And they're in there, and they're having a grand old time. I walk down a little further, and Satan says to me, this is your room, Jim, right here. And in that room is Mimi from the Drew Carey Show. And I said, wait a minute. I said, what's going on here? He says, well, this is your punishment for what you have done on earth. I said, well, wait a minute, what about Joe DeRosa and Shania Twain? And he says, well, that's her punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of the Wilmington Community Fund, Joe DeRosa.
I was going to say thank you, Jim, but everyone's been up here and saying all the nice things and well-deserved things about Joan. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do at the Wilmington Community Fund. Many times when we're faced with a very, very tough decision, we turn to Joan because of her knowledge and the way she handles things, and put the ball in her court and say to her, Joan, we have a tough decision. What should we do? Should we do A or B? Joan would stop and think and ponder a little bit. And she makes the rest of the community fund's life very easy, because she'd say, well, let's do B. And right away we know we have to do A. Some of the other things is Joan is always there. In fact, I think you're an original member of the community fund. Isn't that right? 40 years or something you've been on? 40 years. She's always the first one to step forward to offer her services. And it's really not so much the volunteer work that she does, and I mean this sincerely, but it's the way she does it. She makes everybody feel as though they're part of her family, and that's a remarkable quality. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to present this to you from the Wilmington Community Fund for all the appreciation and the thankfulness, and to show how young I am.
You want to know the time?
It has a beautiful clock in the middle and says the Appreciation Award for the 2000 Good Guy, Joan Searfoss, for your dedication, support of the Wilmington Community Fund. From all of us in town, thank you very much.
That's a lovely gift. That's nice, Joe. Nice job. Our next speaker is the town clerk of the town of Wilmington, Kay Scanlon. And since she is my right-hand person at town meeting, I'm not going to say anything bad about Kay. So Kay Scanlon. She is responsible for swearing everybody into the town offices, so I wanted to try to switch roles a little bit. Oh, she's going to be right back.
I bring my reports with me.
Okay.
A report. One of them is on you.
She'll be right back.
Yeah. Very important.
She always swears everybody in, the town official. I just wanted to kind of reverse roles for a minute. If you could put your right hand up, please. The moderator is always right. If you could repeat after me.
The moderator is always right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure this evening to be representing another portion of Joan's life that maybe some of you don't know about. Joan has been working town meeting and elections for many, many years. And no one does this job for money. Wouldn't you agree, Jim? You only do this because you care about your community. And Joan certainly fits that criteria. She is so good at what she does. Part of her job is every hour on the hour, calling all the different polling places and checking on the figures. She does this with such efficiency. As a matter of fact, sometimes we are sick and tired of hearing from her every hour. But Joan just calmly takes down the figures, and she checks and she checks. And you can hear her saying, "Are you sure that's right, Kay? Nancy, check that again. Sarah, was that 100 or 103? And then she'll look at her, one of the precincts, precinct 3 and 4, and say, "Oh, wow, girls, what a wonderful job you do. That's right, correct." In fact, at the Wildwood School just recently, we hired a few new girls, and it was their first year working. And one of them came up to one of the Board of Registrars and said, "What is that girl doing? Every hour she's peeking behind every one of the machines. Who is she looking for?" And we all just laughed and said, "Who? It's not who, it's the figure. That's all Joan cares about, is the figure." Since I have been town clerk, and my predecessor before me, Patty Ward, who, by the way, is on the continent in Europe, and that's why she couldn't be here, Joan has been so valuable. I just can't say enough about how I feel about her and the confidence that she gives me, knowing that she is always checking and watching and making sure that everything is correct. It gives you the most wonderful feeling, and it means so much to me. We have a small gift for you, which I'd like to present to you. You can look at after.
As long as it's not an adding machine.
No adding machine.
Okay.
We also, like her family, are presenting her a heart. And it says, "Joan, our heartfelt thanks, your dear friends from the election workers." And this is for you.
I will treasure that.
And now, all my, your election friends here would like to make a presentation to you also. So. Right over here, Joan. Come back over here. I'd just like to add mine, and this is from Patty also, who can't be here. In closing, I just would like to again say we thank Joan for the pleasure of her company at all our elections. We call her a lot of things: statistician, the numbers lady, our figure guru, tally clerk, and also a big pain in the neck. But I'm sure that all of the girls will agree, and all of you here also, that the most important thing we call her is our friend. Congratulations.
Thank you, Kay. Our next speaker is the director of the Wilmington Public Library, also my sister-in-law, Tina Stewart. And rule number 2 when you're an MC is never, ever make fun of a family member. Yeah. So I'd like to introduce the director of the Wilmington Public Library, Tina Stewart.
Good evening. I'm very pleased to be here tonight with our library table. We have representatives from the staff, the trustees, and the friends. I'm very happy to tell you about Joan's library connection. About 3 years ago, the trustees and I decided it was time that the Wilmington Memorial Library had a friends group. So Martha Stevenson, one of the trustees, and I got together to brainstorm on who we could ask to move this project forward. And of course, Joan's name was on top of the list. But we were concerned because Joan had already committed herself to so many great organizations in town. Would she have the time? And yes, she came. She came to our first organizational meeting. And she volunteered for one of the most important committees, and with all due respect to the lawyers, one of the most boring committees, the bylaw committee. So she got together with her committee and pounded out the rules for the group, and brought the committee to date to about 200 members, and worked really hard, and I really appreciate her for laying the ground rules for this great organization, which has really done so much for the library in the last 3 years. And Joan is also an advocate for the library. A few months ago, she called me at home and said to me, "What does the library need?" And I said, "Well, you mean we need a new building?" She said, "Well, yeah, I know that." But she said, "What else?" And I said, "Well, we need some new technology to expand our internet classes." And then a few months later, the Community Fund presents the Friends with a very generous check for us to add a PC and an LCD projector for us to add more internet classes at the library. Joan also comes to programs at the library. She supports the library, and she brings a basket of goodies for the refreshment table. And last year, she brought Dick to one of the programs. She brought Dick to an art auction. Now, at the art auction, the library was auctioning some of the old art prints that we had at the library. And some of them were very nice. You'd be proud to put them on your wall. And some of them were quite ugly. And Dick was buying all the ugly ones. And Joan was a little embarrassed, so she said he was buying them for the frames. So I have some things for Joan to put in one of those frames tonight. But before I show you what I have, Joan is also an avid reader, and she donates her mint condition books to the library. So I know Joan likes to read mystery and suspense. But I think it's time for Joan to broaden her reading taste to romance, especially the sizzling, swashbuckling romance. So I have an official American Library Association poster, and I'd like to present to Joan Fabio.
Phyllis, eat your heart out.
We're going to invite him to join the Friends. And here you go. I'm sorry, Dick. Now I'd like to just introduce our past president of the Friends of the Library, Karen Campbell. Karen worked very hard with Joan on the bylaw committee and in getting our Friends organized, and she would like to make a presentation now to Joan. Thank you, Joan.
Unwittingly come up with the best way to get up to this podium and avoid some of the harassment. I'll take donations from any of the other speakers that would like to be introduced directly rather than through the moderator. On behalf of the Friends, I would like to present Joan with this certificate. It says Good Guy 2000 in honor of Joan Searfoss. The Friends of the Library have given $100 for books to be purchased in your name and donated to the library.
Oh.
Our next speaker this evening is Senator Bruce Tarr, and the senator does a lot of work for the elderly and for all of his constituents. And the other day he was touring a nursing home in his district, and he walks into this room, and there is a guy standing there pretending to saw wood, and another guy hanging upside down from the ceiling. He walks in and he says to the first guy, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, can't you see I'm building this beautiful mahogany cabinet over here?" "Oh, that's very nice." He says, "Well, what about the guy hanging from the ceiling?" The guy says, "Well, he's a little bit odd, He thinks he's a light bulb." He says, "He thinks he's a light bulb. Don't you think we ought to take him down before the blood rushes to his head and something happens?" Guy looks at the senator and says, "In what, work in the dark?" that's going to hit you about halfway home tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you the senator from for the town of Wilmington, from the town of Gloucester, Senator Bruce Tarr.
Thanks, Jim, and good evening. Actually, I have to be very quick to point out to the moderator that there are a few towns in between Gloucester and Wilmington, and that's kind of one of the requirements of redistricting. So I do represent just a few more. And according to many of the folks that work at town meeting, Jim, they say they're used to working in the dark, so that last set of comments was very appropriate. I have been learning so much about you. In fact, at our table, it's absolutely incredible. And the number one comment I hear from so many people at my table is, my God, he has a sense of humor. And people are enjoying it so much. And in fact, they also wanted me, in fact, Representative Maselli wanted me to remind you of rule number 4, which is never insult the legislative delegation during the pendency of the state budget. You will learn that lesson next July 1 when the budget is signed and at your next town meeting. But it really is interesting, and I was interested to hear about what Kay was saying, because I also learned something from my colleague that Jim Maselli said, Joan, that you always come in with just the right number of votes in every election. And he said you give him an incredible amount of confidence, and in fact, I have the results of this fall's election from him to give to you so you can be a little bit ahead of the curve. But I also learned a bunch of things from the people at my table about the Board of Selectmen. For instance, there's a little-known bylaw that says within the next few weeks, if they don't elect a chairman, that the recipient of the Good Guy Award becomes the chairman. To tell you, Joan, that everyone at my table thought that was great because you're so used to working with the 4th of July that all of the fireworks at the Board of Selectmen's meetings won't be any great surprise. And, you know, it's great to hear about all of these lawyer jokes and all the stories about lawyers. I was just reminded of a couple of stories. I was going to share one with Chief Stewart about how the city of New York reduced ambulance response time by 50%. And the reason they did that is because they let the lawyers drive the ambulances because they were always first on the scene. But then I was listening about all of these organizations, Joan. My goodness, I didn't know you needed a tax deduction that bad, but I'm listening to this endless list and list and list. And it reminded me of the attorney who passed away. And he went to the pearly gates, since they seem to be a popular place tonight. And he went to the pearly gates, and St. Peter met him at the door, and he pled his case, pardon the pun, and he said, my God, St. Peter, he said, I'm only 40 years old. This is very, very premature. What am I doing here? And St. Peter looked at him and said, that's interesting. We counted the hours you billed your clients for, and you're actually 275 and long overdue. And so I had to think about that when I was thinking about all this great list of accomplishments. And then the other question that came up at my table, you were chided earlier for being from Maine. But somebody at my table who was a little bit older than I am reminded me that back in the 1800s, Maine was part of Massachusetts. And they were wondering, Joan, if you really were a citizen, and we just didn't know about it at the time. And then some wise guy really capped it all off by saying, well, you know why Joan got to be so active in the 4th of July committee? And I said, well, she's a great person. She gives of herself. She invests and she inspires everyone that she works with. And they said, no, actually, she was the only one around when the Declaration was first delivered, and we thought that maybe that she'd be a useful asset to the committee. But I'll tell you, Jim, the therapy's working beautifully. You look great, and I'm just happy about that. For so many years, I wondered, I sit at town meeting, and I see him standing there with that blank look on his face while people are giving these impassioned speeches. And now I know why you were thinking up all the jokes for tonight. So it's great to hear a little bit about that. But I know that we have a lot of speakers, and I don't want to belabor the point. In fact, I'm told that the real fun starts at midnight, and that's why you delayed the meal tonight, Jim, so that we could get started. But I want to just take a moment and, you know, I was also told, and I actually had a page when I was coming in, that one of the great recommendations you have made to the 4th of July Committee, I think it's wonderful that you've retained Jim Karasiotis as a budgetary consultant. He's not working anymore at the Big Dig, and he called me and said he's delighted to be coming to work for you and on behalf of the town. And he really looks forward to working with that moderator because he said they share many of the same traits. He said, I am much more like Jim Stewart than I am Saddam Hussein. And I said, well, we'll get back to you on that. But I do have a citation from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And in all seriousness, in a community that's going to be strong and a community that's going to be united toward purpose for so many good causes, there needs to be people who stand up and lead by example, who say when a job is there to be done that I'll do it, and I'll do it willingly, and I'll do it cheerfully, and I'll do it in such a way that I magnetize the effort to get an entire town behind it. Wilmington is fortunate to have a few of those types of people, and that's why it is such a great town. But tonight, we particularly celebrate Joan because you are one of the best examples of someone who really, truly believes in community. There's an old saying that if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And all too often, and perhaps very often, Joan, this community has found you as a busy person, given you the next challenge, and you've risen to it and made the community a better and a stronger place, and a place that gets reminded by what you do that we are only as strong as what we give to each other, and how we remember each other, and how we find the time in an incredibly busy lifestyle to give something back to the people who support us in that community. Joan, you're one of the best examples of that I know. And so I'm pleased to bring you from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts a State Senate official citation. It reads, be it known, you can stand up, that's okay. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Joan Searfoss in recognition of receiving the Good Guy Award. And the ACLU, by the way, is going to bring suit saying it should be the Good Gal Award tomorrow. There's enough lawyers in the room to defend the action. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate. This is signed by Thomas F. Birmingham, the President of the Massachusetts State Senate. It's attested to by Patrick Scanlon, our clerk, and it's offered by myself, State Senator Bruce Tarr, on May 11th, 2000. And Joan, I'm very pleased and honored to be able to give this to you, and also to say that when you take possession of this, you will have the signature of both Senate President Birmingham and Speaker Finneran, courtesy of Jim Maselli. And those two signatures last year took us 6 months to get on a budget, and we got yours in 48 hours, so congratulations.
Does this mean it's worth something on eBay? Does this mean it's worth something on eBay?
That was great, Senator. And Senator, that blank stare on my face at town meeting was just my attempt to remember your accomplishments as our senator. But I'm going to pay for this. I know I am. Our next speaker is someone who wrote one of the beautiful letters to the nominating committee of the Good Guy Award. And we received many, many letters and cards requesting that Joan be the good person this year. And I'd like to call up one of those, the letter that I picked out that really exemplified what I thought Joan was all about. This is really a lovely letter, and I'd like to call on Lila Snyder, if I could, to come up and, Lila Snyder, I'm sorry, to come up and read this letter.
Thank you. I'm glad you don't know me well enough to tell a joke. Thank you. I expanded on the letter that I wrote because there were things I wanted to say about Joan that I couldn't put in a one-page letter. So here it goes. Joan Searfoss has been chosen for this year's Wilmington Good Guy Award. I cannot imagine anyone more deserving. Joan is a dedicated person who puts her all into whatever endeavor she undertakes, and she undertakes plenty. Her contributions to the town of Wilmington are legendary. She has worked the polls, organized charity drives and fundraisers, helps to create a 4th of July celebration which is unsurpassed in any town in America. Just to fill spare moments between Thanksgiving and Christmas, she helped organize the annual tree lighting celebration on the Commons. Since 1976, I've had the privilege of calling Joan my friend. I moved here as a newlywed from Ohio and was fortunate to work beside Joan at Ropes & Gray. She taught me how to survive life in a large law firm from all angles. Later on, she helped guide me through the maze of administration and taught me how to preserve my sanity with her listening abilities and her wise counsel. Joan taught me how to eat my first lobster. Many years ago, she coddled my sons. Steve, I hate to tell you, but she even took a mental health day, one of her few, when she wasn't working the polls, when my husband was out of town, to watch my infant son one day. And that was because I had a deadline to meet for the lawyer that she sat next to for 20 years, and she didn't. I don't know who got the better end of that deal, me or her, but they had a good time. She became a surrogate sister to me and even allows me to share time with her mom, Gert. Joan has worked at Ropes & Gray as a legal secretary and supervisor for 34 years. During that time, Joan has earned the respect and trust of lawyers, clients, secretaries, and staff. Her calm demeanor and even temper have helped many get through a difficult assignment. From the greenest associate to retired partners, many have turned to Joan for assistance and help. Her resourcefulness never disappoints. Looking for institutional knowledge? Ask Joan. Where are the photos from the firm history we wrote in 1962? Ask Joan. Looking for the name of a client we represented 2 mergers back? I don't know, ask Joan. How do we find a florist in Switzerland to deliver champagne and flowers to an important client in a hotel suite? We don't know where it is. Ask Joan. Are you happy in your work?
Roger.
There's a group of retired partners at Ropes & Gray, affectionately called by themselves the Over the Hill Gang. Joan calls them something else, but I won't say that now. One of my jobs later on was to coordinate the quarterly luncheons. When they come to the office, they meet with each other, they get updates from the policy committee, they find out how much money they're going to earn or not earn that year, goings on at the firm, and they have a nice lunch. Sometimes they don't know what they're eating, but they have a nice lunch. The first thing I had to do before I set these quarterly luncheons was figure out when the elections were in the town of Wilmington to make sure Joan would be there. Because if nothing else changed in 34 years, Joan was always there. Joan's professionalism and good nature always shine through. She's seldom ruffled or flustered, and never, ever is Joan disorganized. Joan's dedication and good guy spirit extend well beyond the boundaries of the town. She has organized company outings, Law Day celebrations, it's May 1st in case anybody ever knows, baby showers, wedding showers, emergency assistance, funerals, medical care, personal affairs, you name it, Joan has done it. This is on top of her traditional 9-to-5 opportunities. Too many favors land on her plate because she won't say no, and she refuses to walk away until the project is completed. She does know where to draw the line, however. When I first met Joan, she was working for a distinguished lawyer with a client list including Fortune 500 companies, chief executives of all kinds of places, Republicans, New England Patriots, the city of New York, and her duties naturally extended well beyond the office functions. She managed his personal affairs, she wrote his checks, she took care of his kids and the rest of his family. He valued Joan, as did his family, but he could be a little irascible at times, particularly as he became older and his practice evolved into more of an advisory role. He counseled younger lawyers on how to run the deals. He sat in his office, he smoked cigarettes, he drank a lot of coffee, and he thought deep thoughts. One particular day, when he and Joan had had a difficult morning, he walked past my desk on the way back from the restroom into his office, and I looked up just in time to notice that his pants were ripped, totally ripped, like about 6-7 inches. And I thought, what am I going to do? So as soon as he got back in his office, I said, Joan, his trousers are torn. What are you going to do? She says, I'm not going to do anything. Joan, come on, you got to tell him. I mean, you can see it from the bottom of his jacket where it split. And Joan says, you know, he's altogether showing out. And Joan says, I'm not going to say anything because if I say anything, he's going to go in there. He's going to take him off. He's going to hand him to me and expect me to sew him. And he would have. We let it go. This is Joan. Joan's one of the rare people I know who always looks for the good in others and seldom ever speaks ill of anybody. Grouchy is wasted on Joan. The first 2 years I felt miserable having a bad day because you come in the morning and you feel lousy and you complain about somebody. Joan listens, she empathizes, but never joins in. It took about 4 years for that to hit, but we got there. She does not indulge in character assassination. She can keep a secret better than anybody I know except Dick. She doesn't waste time or energy, which could be better spent on more productive matters. If she sees a need, she's the first to step in, meet it, without any fuss or bother or interest in personal gain. One last story. One of Joan's closest friendships at the firm, before Steve and Christopher, was with a young partner who was tapped to go to Washington and work for the White House. Unfortunately for him, it was the Clinton White House, but we commiserated and he understood and he decided to go anyway. Anyway, it was an honor. And joining the Attorney General staff and doing the paperwork to get there is like plowing through the Internal Revenue Code. It's just endless. Joan worked and worked and worked, and her heart's in her throat, and she didn't want to see him leave. He wanted to go, but he didn't want to leave the firm, had to resign. So they did the forms, they did the documentations, they did the recommendations, they had them certified, they had them registered, they had them verified, they got ready to file. It was stressful for Peter, who was anxious about it, and it was stressful for Joan, who understood the challenge and the career move and knew that this was what he had to do, but she was reluctant to have him leave, but she wasn't going to show it. One of the largest documents they had to produce was a personal statement, I think, attesting to why he wanted the position and why he felt that he was qualified. After many revisions and a week or two to get this ready, they finally got it finalized, got it signed. You know where I'm going. Got it ready. She gave him a copy and sent him back in his room and said, okay, now read it over one last time before we send it off. So he went in his room and she sat at the desk and she's doing what Joan does, which is CCHs, letters, filing, whatever, you know, everything's smooth, desk is clean. All of a sudden, there was an explosion inside the office and he heard, Joan! And out comes Peter, waving this thing. Because the document that Joan had given him, she'd replaced all the pages that said lifelong Democrat with lifelong Republican. And he thought this was what she had filed. Tension was broken, he laughed, big hugs, but that's the way it is. Good neighbor, good citizen, terrific friend. Joan, Wilmington, good guy, year 2000. Steve has another lawyer joke before you finish.
One question, Lila. When Joan was taking work time to watch your children, was Jane Swift involved in that mix anywhere? Just wanted to check. Okay. Dick Searfoss has spent an awful lot of time putting a pictorial history of Joan's life together. I'm going to take a few minutes if we could. He has a slide projector there. This is some really, really special pictures. People often wonder how long Joan has been on the 4th of July committee. Joan goes way back, way back. Here's Joan getting an early start on celebrating the 4th of July, as shown here with the great founders of our nation, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Jack Cushing. If I could get a little light here so that I could read, thank you. Here we see Joan preparing to go out on a date with Dick. Well armed and prepared to fight off his advances, obviously her ammunition eventually ran out. Later, Joan gave up the guns and opted for heavier clothing as a form of protection on dates with Dick. Here we see Joan and Dick at Joan's senior prom in Presque Isle, Maine. Dick was named prom king that year because he was the only guy there with all his teeth. Here's Joan cutting a rug at her senior prom. To show you why Dick won senior prom king, here's Joan with her date at the junior prom. After Joan graduated from high school, she took up bodybuilding. Here she checks to see if her deodorant is as strong as she is. Joan was an Olympic hopeful in gymnastics until she took this header on the balance beam, which ended her Olympic gymnastic hopes. We found this photo, but weren't sure whether Joan is making a fashion statement or trying out for a role as the Tin Man on The Wizard of Oz. We also found this photo, which shows the time Joan showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show in a tutu in an attempt to upstage the political guests, a young Mike Kyra, Jim Maselli, and Bob Kane. Joan is hobnobbed with the highest echelon of government officials. Here we see Joan advising the president for the last time. 2 and 2 is 4. Joan is still working on 1-on-1 with is 2 with the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. 1 and 1 is 2. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to try this one. Joan is shown here with Queen Elizabeth II on the occasion of the knighting of a good man, Dick Searfoss. We will never forget the now famous words of the Queen as she proclaimed, "Good night, Dick." During the war, women were asked to wear shorter skirts to save on valuable material. Pretty good idea, huh, guys? Unfortunately, Joan got the memo and thought it said shorter hair. That was Dick's, Joan, not mine. A lot of people don't know this, but Joan was an original member of the Saturday Night Live cast. But she quit after learning she had to work on Saturday nights. Joan danced in the Folies Bergère, but she had a problem. She couldn't kick high enough. This photo caught one of the rare times she managed a high kick, but she really didn't kick that high. She caught her heel on the other heel of the other dancer. After months of practice, she mastered the high kick, and as you can see, she was exuberant about it, as were all the men in the front row at the theater. Joan appeared in the smash movie Titanic as a stunt double for female co-star Kate Winslet. Joan's film career went down with the ship. Did you know that Joan worked for the CIA as a spy in Iraq prior to Desert Storm? It's a shame that her CIA supervisor didn't let her know that all Iraqi women have 20/20 vision. Joan looks on at a recent Wilmington Board of Selectmen's meeting while each member nominates himself for the new board chairmanship. Everyone's been trying to get Joan to quit smoking, but she's resisting their efforts, this time with force. Houston, we have a problem. Joan's ventures into the 4th of July activities started small. But her 4th of July activities quickly exploded into a full-blown celebration. Here, Joan is putting on Wilmington's very first fireworks display on Wilmington Common with only 74 entries. One year, the porta potty company messed up and delivered only one porta potty for the entire 4th of July celebration. Joan then founded a subcommittee to maintain order. This subcommittee later became known as the Potty Patrol. One night during the 4th of July celebration week, the band didn't show up, so Joan decided to entertain everyone on the Common. This is what happened when Joan announced the first and only cancellation of Wilmington's annual 4th of July fireworks display. Here's Kay Scanlon getting her town meeting tellers warmed up for another tough meeting. Team Captain Joan Searfoss. Joan works at Ropes & Gray, an old-fashioned law firm in Boston. Many people wonder how long she's been there. We found this old photo which shows her panic at the prospect of having to use this newfangled machine called a typewriter. Joan has been using the Boston and Maine commuter rail and the Boston subway for over 25 years to go to work. One day, she missed the train and decided to drive. Joan won $500,000 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when she correctly answered the following question. In the periodic table of elements in the group named the Lanthanidine series, what is the name of the element with the atomic number 68? But she quickly gave back that $500,000 when she wrongly answered the million-dollar question of which of the Three Stooges has black hair, and she answered Senator Bruce Tarr. Payback, Senator. A rose and two thorns. And here Joan is. She's shown here helping to prove that you can fit all of Tom Pizarro's friends in one phone booth. And that's it. I got to tell you, Dick Searfoss, he's the man. He did all that work. Dick, nice job. He spent an awful lot of time on that. And now it's time for the official presentation of this year's Good Guy Award, and it is customary that last year's Good Guy gets the honors of doing that. Last year's Good Guy was Chip Bruce. Chip is a DARE officer, which stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, and he wanted me to let you know that he would like to speak to these two tables right here after the evening's over. Actually, Chip is more than the DARE officer. He's a Wilmington police officer, and he has been very instrumental in the design of the new public safety building, the police fire station that's being built, especially that new drive-up Dunkin' Donuts they have on the backside of it. Just pull right up. I'll have a gun permit, an accident report, a dozen crawlers, and a large regular place. But here to present the official award of the 2000 Wilmington Good Guy, Good Person is the Wilmington DARE officer and last year's recipient of the Good Guy, Mr. Chip Bruce.
I'll have you know that in my 11 years on the police department, I haven't eaten a donut, and I take pride in that. Joan, it's kind of humbling to sit here. I know last year was, for me, as much as it's an honor, it can be uncomfortable. And to hear people speak about you in ways that I know that I never realized what people really thought. I do know what people think of you. I had the honor of sitting with the rest of the Good Guy Committee and voting on this year's selection and having a chance to read the nominations and then to sit here and listen to what people have to say about you. Certainly it is all true. I know that I work quite a bit during that 4th of July celebration, and you are always there, whatever we need, whether it's a lost child, where are the bathrooms, and are there any tickets for this ride, what time are we closing, what are we supposed to do next? Always have an answer. Yeah, I know you make our life easy. You are an asset to the community, and it is my privilege to welcome you into what I've found out to be quite an elite group of people. Until last year, I had known what the good guy was, and I know many of the good guys, but to be part of that group is certainly an honor, and it is my privilege to welcome you into this wonderful group of people. And I have a presentation for you. I also want you to know that you're obviously more important than I am, and I must be a nicer person because I didn't get a stand for mine last year. It says, Wilmington Good Guy Award, Joan Searfoss, May 12th, year 2000. Congratulations and welcome to the Good Guy group, and it's an honor for me to welcome you into our organization.
Checking to see if there's some jokes here that Jim forgot to tell, but they're all checked off, I guess. I just don't know what to say other than I was totally surprised. Forgive me for the first words that I said when I came in the door. Did you? All right, all right. So I just repeated what he said last year, so I don't feel so bad. I've always come to a lot of the Good Guy Awards. I feel very honored to have been nominated and chosen this year. I only wish that we'd known about this in advance, so I would have been prepared to say something. That's not very fair, you know? I don't know. Could we change the rules another year, maybe?
Another chairman.
Oh, all right. I feel very honored to be chosen behind a great man that was chosen last year. I think an awful lot of Chip and what he does for the town of Wilmington, as well as every other good guy before him and those that have passed on. I was fortunate to know Rocco very well over the years, also Dick Duggan through Community Fund mainly. I just feel very honored to see so many friends, neighbors, family. I must say I came in tonight and I'd look at the tables and I'd see, you know, a face or two, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, a few seconds later I'd look and I'd see who else was at the table. My longtime friend, Mary, but Mame all my life. We grew up in Prescott across the street from each other. I came in tonight, she was one of the last of my family members over there at the table that I recognized. I thought it was my nephew's girlfriend that I hadn't met. I mean, it's a shock, it's overwhelming. Everybody in this room, I know, they give a lot to the community. Wilmington would not be Wilmington if it weren't for the people here. I feel very honored to be a part of this town. I hope to do more things for the town. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting on Community Fund Tuesday night. I have something to talk to you about. If we have representatives of the Lions Club here tonight, I know, and Rotary, if we have any sons, if anybody here knows of any organization that is not represented here tonight, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor and call them and ask them if they could please attend the 4th of July building next Tuesday night, the Wilmington Community Fund meeting, because I have something that I would like to present that might benefit the town. But we've got to raise some money in order to do it. So I'm looking for some help. Actually, Mr. Whitney, I believe, has already been notified, and I have heard that might be helping on this aspect, and Rotary has also shown an interest. I'm not going to say any more, so if you're interested and want to find out, you got to come Tuesday night at 7:30. But I don't know, I feel very proud and to be a part of the community. I love my 4th of July. I think the best part of it is to see all of you there and to see your families there, to see the new families in town with their little kids there, and it's just, I don't know, to me that makes the 4th of July, the family and the celebration in honor of our country and our independence. I flabbergasted that Ropes and Gray came tonight. My longtime friend, Lila, my boss, Steve, Christopher Austin, his wife, Beth. I have a very good friend in the company, John, who couldn't make it tonight, but his wife, Tina, is here. Susan and Ellie. I mean, I could go on, and the train gang and my neighbors. I mean, I'm just absolutely floored. My heart is just filled with, I don't know what. I couldn't eat. I look forward to being a part of this wonderful, wonderful group of citizens in Wilmington. And I look forward to being a part of selecting the next good guy for next year. It's been my honor to serve on the committees that I have. The Friends of the Library. Tina, I have more books for you, don't worry. I just don't know what to say. If I had known, I would have come prepared with the speech. I'm just sort of at a loss for words. I just appreciate everyone coming tonight, and Lila's telling me to wind it up, so I will wind it up. It's just wonderful to see everyone, and and my family, Maine and Connecticut. I don't know. I just don't know what to say. Jimmy, I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
I think Joan's phrase was a little bit off. Wilmington wouldn't be Wilmington without Joan Searfoss. And I'd like to introduce the lady that made that all possible, and that's Joan's mother, Gertrude Davis. And the last thing that I'd like to present to Joan is I have all of the letters of recommendation, all the nomination letters that so many people sent in recommending that she be the good guy. And I've had the privilege of working on the 4th of July committee with Joan for 18 years now. And I can tell you there is no person, when there is something that needs to be done, that you want to go to more than Joan Searfoss. And she has been, you know, we have titles and chairmans and all that stuff, but the person who really gets all that work done behind the scenes and keeps me and a lot of the other members out of trouble is this lady right here. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I think from the whole 4th of July committee how much we appreciate it. So it's my pleasure to present to you all of these letters, and actually some of my jokes, which you'll probably get rid of, but and I wanted to congratulate you once again on being this year's Wilmington Good Guy. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here this evening. I hope you enjoyed the evening, and drive safely home. Thank you.